The massive observation ship hung silently behind Jupiter's largest moon, Ganymede. Inside, alien researcher Zix-427 watched the video feeds from Earth with growing concern. His four eyes blinked rapidly as he reviewed the latest simulation data. "Most unusual," he muttered, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard galactic common. "These humans are developing far more quickly than our models predicted." The research vessel had been monitoring Earth for 50 years, collecting data on human military responses, technological advancement, and social development. What troubled Zix-427 most was how humans reacted to threats. Unlike other species who followed predictable patterns, humans seemed to thrive on chaos. Chief Researcher called out one of his assistants. "You need to see this." The assistant's tentacles waved in agitation as he brought up a new holographic display. The display showed a small Earth vessel near the outer edges of Jupiter's orbit. It wasn't part of the regular patrol routes they had mapped. More concerning was the fact that the ship's sensors were pointed directly at one of their cloaked observation probes. Aboard the Earth vessel U.S. Defender, Lieutenant Steve Baker stared at his sensor readings with a mix of confusion and excitement. After 3 years of routine patrol duty in the outer solar system, he had finally found something interesting. "Control, this is Baker," he said into his comm. "I'm picking up some weird energy readings out here. It's like something's bending the light around Jupiter's L4 point." "Probably just sensor ghosts, Lieutenant," came the bored reply. "Run a diagnostic and head back to your patrol route." Baker frowned at the response. He had run 3 diagnostics already, and the reading remained. Instead of following orders, he guided his ship closer to the anomaly. As he approached, his sensors picked up more details. Whatever was out there was about the size of a small car, and definitely artificial. In the observation ship, alarms began blaring. "The human vessel is approaching Probe 7. An analyst shouted. "It's already breached the outer stealth field." Zix-427 moved quickly to the command center, his long legs carrying him across the deck in 3 strides. "Activate emergency protocols. Recall the probe immediately." But it was too late. Lieutenant Baker watched in amazement as a small metallic object suddenly appeared out of nowhere about a kilometer ahead of his ship. The probe was sleek and alien, covered in strange symbols and emitting a soft blue glow. "Control," Baker said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "You're going to want to see this." Transmitting visual feed now. The probe began to move, attempting to escape, but Baker was ready. He had spent countless hours in simulation training for first contact scenarios, even though everyone told him he was wasting his time. Now those hours paid off as he matched the probe's speed and trajectory perfectly. "Unknown vessel," he broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Lieutenant Steve Baker of the Earth Defense Force. We mean you no harm. Please respond." In the observation ship, panic was spreading. Not only had their probe been spotted, but the human pilot was showing remarkable skill in pursuing it. Even more surprising was the calm, professional way he was handling the situation. "Chief Researcher," the ship's captain joined them on the bridge. "The human vessel is tracking the probe's quantum wake. If we don't intervene, they'll be able to follow it right to us." Zix-427 felt his heart sink. This was exactly the scenario they had hoped to avoid. The Galactic Council had strict protocols about first contact with developing civilizations. Earth wasn't supposed to be ready for contact for at least another century. Baker's pursuit led him through a complex series of maneuvers around Jupiter's moons. The alien probe was fast and agile, but his smaller ship could match its every move. Years of flying through the asteroid belt had made him an excellent pilot, and right now, he was putting every bit of that experience to use. "Control," he reported, "the object is trying to lose me in Ganymede's shadow. Permission to continue pursuit." There was a long pause before his commander responded. "Permission granted, Lieutenant. Half the solar system is watching your feed now. Don't mess this up." As Baker's ship emerged from Ganymede's shadow, his sensors went crazy. Ahead of him, space itself seemed to ripple and distort. A massive shape gradually became visible, a ship bigger than anything humans had ever built, its hull covered in the same strange symbols as the probe. In the observation ship, Zix 427 made a decision that would change the course of human history. "Open a channel to the human vessel," he ordered. "It seems the people of Earth have forced our hand." Baker's comm system crackled with an incoming transmission. The voice that came through was clearly artificial, but the words were in perfect English. "Lieutenant Steve Baker of Earth," the voice said, "I am Chief Researcher Zix 427 of the Galactic Council Science Division. On behalf of the Council, I must commend your exceptional piloting skills and professional handling of this situation." Baker took a deep breath before responding. "Thank you, Chief Researcher. I take it you folks have been watching us for a while." "Indeed we have," Zix 427 replied, a note of amusement in his synthesized voice. "Though I must admit, you've managed to surprise us yet again. We had not anticipated direct contact for many years." "Well," Baker said with a small smile, "we humans have a habit of doing the unexpected. Would you be interested in a more formal introduction? I'm sure our leaders would love to chat." As the massive alien ship decloaked completely, Baker's sensors detected dozens of similar vessels emerging from hiding spots throughout the solar system. Earth had been under observation for far longer than anyone had suspected. In the following hours, as news of the contact spread across Earth, Zix 427 prepared his report to the Galactic Council. In it, he emphasized one crucial point. The humans had not reacted with fear or aggression to the discovery of alien observers in their system. Instead, they had shown curiosity, skill, and a remarkable ability to adapt to the unexpected. The last line of his report would soon become famous throughout the galaxy. "Warning: the warriors of Terra do not follow conventional patterns. Approach with caution. They have a tendency to exceed all expectations." As Steve Baker guided his ship back to Earth, escorted by alien vessels that had been hiding in plain sight for decades, he couldn't help but smile. Humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning, and he had helped start it all because he'd been too curious to ignore an unusual sensor reading. Little did he know that his encounter would set in motion a series of events that would force humanity to prove its worth to the galaxy in ways no one could have predicted. 1 month after first contact, the United Nations Assembly Hall was packed with both human and alien representatives. The massive chamber buzzed with excitement as Laura Reeves, Earth's newly appointed diplomatic representative, prepared to address the Galactic Council's delegation. Laura smoothed down her navy blue suit and took a deep breath. At 38, she hadn't expected to become humanity's voice to the stars. But her background in international conflict resolution and her unusually calm demeanor had made her the perfect choice. The alien delegates filled one side of the hall. Some floated in anti-gravity pods, others sat in specially designed chairs, and a few simply stood on their various appendages. But all eyes, whether they had 2 or 12, were fixed on the human speaker's podium. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council," Laura began, her voice clear and steady. "We thank you for this opportunity to join the greater galactic community." Before she could continue, a loud snort echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Krill of the Drachnid Empire rose from his seat. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his scaled skin shimmering under the lights, and his 4 arms crossed in obvious disapproval. "This is a waste of time," Krill announced, his translator making his growls sound almost musical. "The humans barely have colonies on their own moon. They still use primitive chemical rockets. How can they possibly contribute to the Galactic Council?" Laura kept her face neutral, though her heart raced. The Drachnids were one of the most powerful species in the Council, and their opinion carried significant weight. "With respect, Ambassador," she replied, "humanity's worth cannot be measured by the age of our technology alone." Krill's tail swished in agitation. "Pretty words, but meaningless. In the last Galactic War, the Drachnid Empire fielded 1,000,000 warriors. Our ships can turn planets to ash. What can Earth offer that we don't already have? The chamber grew quiet. This was the moment that could determine humanity's future among the stars. Laura thought of Steve Baker, who had shown such skill in tracking the alien probe. She thought of how humans had survived and thrived despite countless challenges. "We offer something unique, Ambassador," she said. "We offer adaptation, innovation, the ability to look at old problems in new ways." Krill's laugh was like grinding stones. "Prove it. What do you propose?" Laura asked, keeping her voice level. The Drachnid Ambassador's 4 eyes gleamed. "A series of trials. Combat scenarios that test your species' abilities. If your warriors can prove themselves worthy, the Drachnids will support Earth's membership in the Council." Murmurs filled the chamber. Combat trials hadn't been used to test new species in over 10,000 years. They were considered barbaric by many council members. Zix 427, who was present as an observer, raised his appendage to speak. "Ambassador Krill, my research suggests that challenging humans to combat might be unwise." "Scared for them, researcher," Krill mocked. "They should be. Our warriors trained from birth. We have combat robots that can predict and counter any known fighting style." Laura felt a small smile tugging at her lips. The Drachnid Ambassador had just made a crucial mistake. He had underestimated human determination. "We accept your challenge," she declared. The chamber erupted in chaos. Other council members began arguing about the legality of combat trials. The human delegates huddled together, discussing the implications, but Laura kept her eyes on Krill, who looked surprised by her quick acceptance. "You understand," he said, leaning forward, "that these trials will not be simple sparring matches. They will test every aspect of your military capabilities: strategy, strength, skill, and spirit." "We understand perfectly," Laura replied. "And we have just one question. When do we start?" In the back of the chamber, Steve Baker watched with growing excitement. After his first contact experience, he had been assigned as a military liaison to the diplomatic team. He knew that humans were far behind in technology, but he had seen firsthand how quickly they could learn and adapt. The terms were quickly arranged. Earth would have 3 months to prepare. They would face 3 trials: individual combat, small unit tactics, and full battle simulation. The Drachnids would provide the combat arena and would allow Earth forces to train with some basic galactic technology to make the competition fair. As the assembly dispersed, Laura found herself facing Zix 427. The alien researcher seemed concerned. "The Drachnids are not known for their mercy," he warned. "They believe they are honoring you with these trials, but many species have been humiliated by such challenges." "Then they haven't faced humans before," Laura said confidently. "We have something that your studies might have missed." "And what is that?" "The ability to turn disadvantages into advantages. You'll see." That evening, in a secure conference room overlooking New York City, Laura met with Earth's military council. The room was tense as they discussed their options. "The Drachnids think they're setting us up for failure," she explained. "But they've given us exactly what we need: a chance to prove ourselves on our own terms." General Paul Rogers nodded slowly. "They expect us to try to match their technology and fighting style. But we won't do that, will we?" "No," Laura smiled. "We're going to show them something they've never seen before, something uniquely human." As the meeting continued late into the night, plans were made and orders were sent out. Across the globe, special forces units began mobilizing. Training facilities were converted to simulate alien technology, and most importantly, humanity began doing what it did best: preparing to overcome impossible odds. In his quarters aboard the Drachnid flagship, Ambassador Krill reviewed the human military records provided by Zix 427's research team. He noted their countless wars, their rapid technological advancement, their unusual tactics. For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. Then he dismissed it. After all, how dangerous could these primitive humans really be? As the Earth's representatives left the UN building that night, Laura looked up at the stars, now knowing they held both challenge and opportunity. The next 3 months would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. They think they're testing us, she murmured to herself. But really, they're about to learn why every human child knows the story of David and Goliath. In orbit, aboard the observation ship, Zix 427 made a new entry in his report. The humans have accepted combat trials with the Drachnids. May the great void have mercy on the Drachnids. Commander Amy Martinez stood in the middle of the new training facility, watching as soldiers from different nations worked together on the arena floor below. The converted airplane hangar in Nevada now housed the most advanced combat training center on Earth, complete with alien technology provided by the Galactic Council. How are they doing? Peter Collins asked as he limped up beside her. The former Marine had been chosen as their tactical advisor, his experience in unconventional warfare making him perfect for the role. Better than expected, Amy replied, pointing to a group practicing with energy shields. They're learning to use the alien tech in ways even the instructors didn't anticipate. Below them, a soldier named Rick Cooper was teaching others how to bounce the energy shield's force fields off each other, creating unexpected angles of protection. It wasn't how the Drachnids used the technology, but it worked. The aliens think we'll try to copy their fighting style, Peter said, grinning. They don't understand that humans are really good at breaking things, including the rules of conventional combat. Amy nodded, remembering the shocked faces of the alien observers when they first showed them Earth's martial arts. The idea of turning an opponent's strength against them seemed to puzzle them completely. Speaking of breaking things, she said, "Show me what you've got planned for today." Peter led her to a simulation room where several soldiers were practicing with alien weapon systems. Instead of using them as designed, they had found ways to combine Earth fighting techniques with alien technology. "Watch this," Peter said, pointing to a soldier named Sarah Adams. She was using an alien energy staff like a gymnast's pole vault, launching herself over an opponent while firing the weapon. The combination of human acrobatics and alien tech was devastating. "The Drachnids won't expect this," Amy said, making notes on her tablet. "They think combat is all about raw power and advanced technology. That's their weakness," Peter replied. "They've forgotten that warfare is also about creativity and adaptation." In another part of the facility, Steve Baker was working with a team learning to pilot alien scout ships. His experience from the first contact incident had proved invaluable. "Remember," he called out to his trainees, "these ships respond to thought as much as physical control. Don't fight the neural interface. Work with it, like dancing with a partner." The pilots were getting better every day. Some had already figured out how to perform maneuvers that the alien instructors had declared impossible. When questioned about it, the pilots simply shrugged and said, "We didn't know it was impossible, so we did it anyway." Laura Reeves visited the facility regularly, watching the progress and sending reports back to the UN. Today, she stood with Zix 427, who had been assigned as an official observer. "Your people continue to surprise us," the alien researcher said, his translator conveying a tone of amazement. "You're using everything in ways we never considered." Laura smiled as they watched a demonstration where soldiers combined Brazilian jiu-jitsu with zero-gravity combat techniques. Humans have a saying, "Necessity is the mother of invention." When we're challenged, we don't just rise to the occasion. We rewrite the rules. The Drachnids won't like that, Zix 427 warned. They believe combat should follow proper forms and traditions. "Then they're going to have a very interesting awakening," Laura replied. As the training continued, word spread through the galactic community about Earth's unusual preparations. Some species began placing bets on the outcomes of the trials. Most expected the humans to fail spectacularly, but a few who had studied Earth's history weren't so sure. 2 months into the training, Ambassador Krill made an unannounced visit to the facility. He stood silently, watching the humans practice, his scaled face unreadable. "Impressive acrobatics," he finally said to Amy, his tone dismissive. "But war is not a dance performance." Amy kept her face neutral as she responded, "You're right, Ambassador. It's much more than that." Just then, a training simulation went wrong. One of the alien power cores began to overload, its containment field flickering dangerously. Before anyone could react, 3 human soldiers had already sprung into action. Working together without a word, they contained the malfunction using a combination of alien tech and improvised tools. Krill watched this with narrowing eyes. "You were prepared for that malfunction." "No," Amy replied honestly. "We just adapt quickly." The ambassador left shortly after, but Amy noticed he seemed less confident than when he had arrived. That evening, in the command center, Amy met with her team to review their progress. They had less than a month left before the trials began. "The individual combat training is solid," Peter reported. "Our fighters have mastered enough alien tech to survive, and their human techniques will give them an edge." Steve Baker added his report on the space combat training. "The pilots are ready. We've developed maneuvers that even the alien eye can't predict." Amy looked at the assembled team, feeling a surge of pride. They had accomplished so much in such a short time. But more importantly, they had maintained their humanity while learning alien ways of war. "Remember," she told them, "we're not just fighting for Earth's membership in the Galactic Council. We're showing them who humans really are. We're showing them why they should be glad we're allies rather than enemies." As the meeting ended, Amy walked to the observation deck and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, the Drachnids were preparing their own warriors, confident in their superior technology and traditional combat methods. They had no idea what was coming. In his private quarters, Peter Collins reviewed combat footage from the day's training. He paused on a sequence where a human fighter had combined Aikido with alien energy weapons, creating a completely new fighting style. "They think we're primitive," he muttered, "but they don't understand. Every limitation humans have ever faced has just been an invitation to innovate." As the facility powered down for the night, the alien observers sent their daily reports to the Galactic Council. Most of these reports were routine, but ZX-427's contained a curious addendum. Warning: human combat preparations continue to defy conventional analysis. Recommend updating threat assessment protocols. Previous models may be severely underestimating their capabilities. The warning was noted but largely ignored. After all, how much could primitives learn in just 3 months? They were about to find out. The arena on Mars' largest moon, Phobos, was bigger than any stadium on Earth. Thousands of alien spectators filled the stands, their varied forms creating a rainbow of colors and shades. In the center of the arena, Frank Morris stood calmly, wearing the modified combat suit that combined Earth and alien technology. "Remember your training." Amy Martinez's voice came through his earpiece. "You're not here to fight like them. You're here to fight like you." Frank nodded, rolling his shoulders to loosen up. At 32, he had spent half his life practicing martial arts before joining the Special Forces. Now he would face the Drachnid champion in single combat. The alien warrior entered from the opposite side. Standing nearly 10 feet tall, covered in iridescent scales, and wearing armor that seemed to shimmer with energy fields, the Drachnid cut an intimidating figure. His name was Kex Tull, and he had never lost a battle. In the diplomatic box, Laura Reeves sat with various alien dignitaries. Ambassador Krill looked particularly smug. "Your champion seems small," he commented, his translator conveying his amusement. "Size isn't everything," Laura replied simply. The arena fell silent as the combat judge, a floating orb of pure energy, descended between the two fighters. Rules were simple. No killing blows, but everything else was allowed. The fight would end with surrender or incapacitation. "Begin," the judge announced, and shot upward. Kex-Tull moved with shocking speed for his size, energy blade humming as he charged at Frank. The human didn't move, standing perfectly still until the last possible moment. Then, just as the blade swept toward him, Frank dropped and rolled. The move surprised Kex-Tull, whose momentum carried him forward. Frank used this opportunity to tap his modified shield generator. Instead of creating a standard bubble shield, it formed a focused point of energy that he used to strike the back of the Drachnid's knee. "Impossible," someone shouted from the stands. "Shield generators are defensive tools." But Frank was already moving again. He had learned during training that Drachnids relied heavily on their technological advantages and traditional fighting forms. They weren't prepared for someone who turned their own weapons into something new. Kex-Tull recovered quickly, his armor absorbing the blow. He turned and launched a series of precise, powerful attacks. Each strike could have ended the fight instantly if it had landed. But Frank moved like water, never being where the blade struck, always flowing around the attacks. "Stand and fight properly." The Drachnid champion roared in frustration. Frank didn't respond. Instead, he continued his strategy of redirecting force and finding unexpected angles of attack. He used his smaller size as an advantage, getting inside the Drachnid's reach where the alien's longer arms and energy blade were less effective. In the observation booth, Jennifer Howard monitored the technical readouts. "Their champion's armor is starting to show stress patterns," she reported. "Those small hits are adding up." The fight continued for 20 minutes. Kex-Tull's attacks grew more aggressive, but less precise as his frustration mounted. Frank remained calm, conserving energy, waiting for his moment. That moment came when the Drachnid attempted a powerful overhead strike. Frank stepped inside the attack, using a basic judo throw augmented by his suit's power systems. The combination of human technique and alien technology sent the massive alien flying through the air. Kex-Tull crashed down hard. Before he could recover, Frank was on him, using his shield generator in short bursts to pin the alien's limbs while applying a simple joint lock. The Drachnid's superior strength meant nothing when the leverage was perfect. "Yield," Frank said quietly. The alien champion struggled, but each movement only made the lock tighter. Finally, Kex-Tull tapped the ground 3 times, the universal signal of surrender. The arena erupted in chaos. Many aliens had never seen a Drachnid warrior defeated, let alone by what they considered primitive techniques. Ambassador Krill stood rigid with shock, all 4 of his arms clenched into fists. "How?" he demanded. "Our champion had superior strength, superior armor, superior weapons." Laura smiled. "But we had superior adaptation. Your champion fought the way he was trained. Ours fought the way he needed to in order to win." The second trial began an hour later. This time, it was a squad combat simulation. 6 humans led by Jennifer Howard faced off against 6 Drachnid warriors in an artificial cityscape. The Drachnids expected a direct confrontation. Instead, the humans split up, using the urban environment to their advantage. Jennifer had studied Drachnid combat doctrine and knew they preferred to maintain unit cohesion. "They're separating," the Drachnid squad leader barked. "Reform the line." But the humans were already executing their plan. They used their modified weapons in ways that confused the alien sensors. Simple tricks like bouncing energy beams off reflective surfaces and using debris to mask their movements proved surprisingly effective. In the control room, Steve Baker watched the tactical display with pride. "They're not fighting the Drachnid's way," he observed. "They're making the Drachnids fight their way." One by one, the alien warriors found themselves isolated and outmaneuvered. Jennifer's team used quick strikes and coordinated attacks to wear down their opponents. Within 45 minutes, the simulation ended with all 6 Drachnids eliminated while only 2 humans were tagged out. The final trial of the day was a space combat simulation. 3 human pilots in alien scout ships faced off against 3 Drachnid aces. The aliens expected the humans to be completely outclassed in space combat. They were wrong. The human pilots used maneuvers that seemed to defy physics, combining their experience flying in atmosphere with the new capabilities of alien technology. They turned their ship's limitations into advantages, using minimal power signatures to hide in debris fields and executing high-G turns that the drachnids thought impossible. When the dust settled, the humans had won again, though not without losses. 2 human ships were disabled, but they had managed to eliminate all 3 drachnid vessels. As the day's trials concluded, the Galactic Council representatives huddled in urgent discussion. No one had expected the humans to win even one trial, let alone all 3. In the Earth team's ready room, Amy gathered her people for a debrief. "Good work today," she said, "but tomorrow will be harder. They won't underestimate us again." Frank Morris, still sore from his battle, nodded in agreement. "They'll adapt their tactics now that they've seen what we can do." "Let them," Jennifer replied with a confident smile. "Adaptation is what humans do best. Tomorrow, we'll show them something new." As the Earth team rested and prepared for the next day's challenges, word of their victories spread through the galaxy. Many species began to look at humans in a new light, some with interest, others with concern. In his private quarters, Ambassador Krill reviewed the day's combat footage, his expression troubled. Perhaps, he realized, they had made a mistake in challenging these humans, but it was too late to back down now. The trials would continue, and humanity would keep surprising the galaxy. Daniel Wright couldn't sleep. Something about the data patterns on his screen bothered him. As the Earth team's intelligence officer, he had been monitoring all communications during the trials, and something wasn't adding up. "Computer, show me the energy readings from yesterday's space combat trial again," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. The holographic display lit up, showing complex patterns of energy signatures from the battle. There, a tiny blip that shouldn't be there, a signal that didn't come from either human or drachnid ships. The door to his quarters slid open, and Laura Reeves walked in. "You called?" "Look at this," Daniel pointed to the anomaly. Someone else was out there during the trials, someone who wasn't supposed to be. Laura leaned closer to the display, her expression growing serious. "Have you told anyone else?" "Not yet. But there's more." Daniel pulled up another screen. "I've been intercepting fragments of encrypted communications. They're using frequencies that neither Earth nor the Galactic Council uses." Before Laura could respond, an alarm blared through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and a computerized voice announced, "Security breach in lower engineering. All personnel report to designated safe zones." Daniel and Laura rushed to the command center. Amy Martinez was already there, along with several drachnid security officers. "What's happening?" Laura asked. "Someone tried to sabotage the arena's containment fields," Amy replied, her face grim. "If they had succeeded, tomorrow's trials would have been impossible." On the main screen, security footage showed dark figures running through the engineering section. They moved with inhuman grace, their bodies seeming to shift and change shape. "Morphers," one of the drachnid officers growled. "The Syndicate of Rogue Worlds is here." Daniel's discovery suddenly made sense. The Syndicate was notorious for causing chaos and disruption throughout the galaxy. They particularly enjoyed interfering with Galactic Council affairs. But why target the trials? Laura wondered aloud. Ambassador Krill burst into the command center, looking more agitated than they had ever seen him. "Because they fear what will happen if humans join the Council," he said, surprising everyone with his directness. "Explain," Laura demanded. The drachnid ambassador's scales rippled with emotion. "Your species has shown unexpected capabilities. The Syndicate thrives on chaos, but you humans, you master it, control it. They see you as a threat." Daniel brought up his data analysis. "They've been watching since the trials began, probably planning something big." "The final trials are tomorrow," Amy said. That would be their best chance to cause real damage. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. The trials weren't just about proving humanity's worth anymore. They were about preventing what could become a major galactic incident. Laura turned to Ambassador Krill. "We need to work together. Your warriors know the Syndicate's tactics, but our people can think in ways they won't expect." The ambassador hesitated, his pride warring with practicality. Finally, he nodded. "Agreed. But how can we prepare for an enemy that can change shape at will?" A smile crossed Amy's face. "We do what humans do best. We adapt." Over the next few hours, the station became a hive of activity. Human and Drachnid warriors trained together, sharing knowledge and developing new tactics. Jennifer Howard worked with Drachnid engineers to modify their sensors, making them better at detecting the subtle energy signatures of morphers. Frank Morris found himself teaching Drachnid warriors how to fight unpredictably. "They'll expect you to follow standard combat forms," he explained. "So don't." The Drachnids were surprisingly quick learners when they allowed themselves to break from tradition. Their natural strength and advanced technology, combined with human adaptability, created something entirely new. Meanwhile, Daniel worked with both human and alien computer experts to set up an early warning system. They converted the entire station's sensor network to search for the unique signatures he had discovered. "The Syndicate thinks they're being clever," he told Laura during a brief break. "But they didn't count on us looking for patterns they didn't know they were creating." Late that night, in a secure conference room, human and Drachnid leaders met to finalize their plans. The atmosphere was tense but cooperative, a dramatic change from just days ago. "Tomorrow's trials will proceed as scheduled," Laura announced. "We can't let the Syndicate know we're onto them." "But we'll be ready," Amy added, bringing up a tactical display. "We've modified the arena's security protocols and positioned joint teams at key points." Ambassador Krill studied the plans with his 4 eyes. "This is most irregular," he said finally. "Joint human-Drachnid operations have never been attempted before." "First time for everything," Laura replied with a slight smile. As they left the conference room, Steve Baker fell into step beside Laura. "You know," he said quietly, "this might work out better than the original trials. Nothing brings people together like a common enemy." Laura nodded. The Syndicate had meant to disrupt the trials and prevent human integration into the galactic community. Instead, they had created exactly the kind of situation where humans excelled. A challenge that required innovation, adaptation, and cooperation. In his quarters, Frank Morris practiced with a Drachnid energy blade, teaching his muscles to work with the alien weapon in ways its creators had never intended. Across the hall, a Drachnid warrior named Kex Toll, the same one Frank had defeated, was learning human martial arts techniques. "Your ways are strange," Kex Toll admitted, "but effective. Perhaps there is wisdom in changing old habits." In the engineering section, Jennifer worked through the night with a mixed team of human and alien technicians. They were modifying the arena systems, preparing surprises for any unwelcome guests. "The Syndicate thinks they know what to expect," she told her team. "Let's show them how wrong they are." As the station's artificial night cycle drew to a close, Daniel made one final check of his monitoring systems. The Syndicate was out there, watching, waiting. But this time, they were the ones being watched. Tomorrow would bring either triumph or disaster. But one thing was certain: it would not go the way anyone expected. Not the Syndicate, not the Galactic Council, and maybe not even the humans themselves. In the observation dome, Laura stood with Ambassador Krill, looking out at the stars. "Your people continue to surprise us," the Drachnid said quietly. "We surprise ourselves sometimes," Laura replied. "That's what makes us human." The final day of trials dawned quietly on Phobos Station. Too quietly, Susan Carter thought as she checked her modified combat suit one last time. As the commander of the Joint Human Drachnid Security Team, she knew that silence usually meant trouble was coming. "All teams, report in," she said into her comm unit. One by one, The mixed teams of humans and drachnids confirmed their positions around the arena. In the control room, Daniel Wright monitored his sensors while Jennifer Howard made final adjustments to their defenses. Movement in Sector 7, Daniel suddenly announced. Energy signature matches Morpher technology. Susan nodded to her team. Right on schedule. Remember your training. Don't trust your eyes. Watch for the energy patterns we practiced identifying. The arena was filling with spectators, none of whom knew about the potential threat. Ambassador Krill and Laura Reeves sat in the diplomatic box as usual, but both wore subtle protective gear under their formal clothes. Multiple signatures now. Daniel's voice came through the comm. They're trying to mask their approach by spreading out. Susan smiled grimly. Just like we expected. Initiate Protocol Alpha. Throughout the arena, hidden sensors activated. Jennifer had modified them to emit a specific frequency that made it harder for morphers to maintain their shape-shifting abilities. It wouldn't stop them completely, but it would make their job much harder. The first attack came during the opening ceremony. 3 figures in the crowd suddenly shifted, their bodies elongating into serpentine forms. They launched themselves toward the arena's power core, but the joint teams were ready. Now, Susan shouted. Frank Morris and Kex Toll moved as one, their newly practiced joint combat style taking the morphers by surprise. The humans' adaptability combined with the drachnids' raw power made them nearly unstoppable. More Syndicate agents revealed themselves, realizing their surprise was lost. But each one found themselves facing something they hadn't expected. Humans and drachnids fighting together, using techniques that had never been seen before. In the upper levels, Steve Baker led a team of pilots to defend against Syndicate ships that suddenly appeared from behind Phobos. The pilots used their mixed training to devastating effect, their unusual tactics confusing the enemy's targeting systems. They're trying to hack the station's controls. Daniel called out. But Jennifer was ready. She had set up a trap in the computer systems, using a combination of Earth's oldest computer viruses and alien technology. The Syndicate's advanced AI systems had no defense against such primitive but effective weapons. In the diplomatic box, Laura watched as Ambassador Krill proved that even a diplomat could fight. When 2 morphers attacked their position, the ambassador used his 4 arms to wield both drachnid energy blades and human-style weapons with surprising skill. You've been practicing, Laura noted as she helped him drive the attackers back. One should always learn from worthy opponents, Krill replied, his translator conveying a tone of respect. The battle raged for nearly an hour. The Syndicate had clearly expected to face either human or drachnid resistance, not both working together in ways that seemed to break all the rules of conventional combat. Susan coordinated the defense from the front lines, using tactics that changed constantly. Every time the Syndicate adapted to one strategy, the defenders switched to something new. They're falling back, Daniel reported. Their ships are retreating behind Phobos. But Susan knew better than to relax. Jennifer, are you ready with the surprise? Oh yes, Jennifer replied, her fingers dancing over her control panel. Activating it now. The surprise was a specially modified asteroid, which Jennifer had secretly parked on the far side of Phobos. As the Syndicate ships passed near it, the asteroid's hidden engines activated, creating a gravitational net that trapped the fleeing vessels. Got them, Jennifer announced triumphantly. The remaining Syndicate agents in the station, seeing their escape route cut off, realized they had lost. One by one, they surrendered to the joint teams. As the security forces began cleaning up, the arena fell silent. Then, surprisingly, applause began. The spectators, who had witnessed the entire battle, were cheering, not just for the humans, but for the unprecedented sight of humans and drachnids working together. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council held an emergency session right there in the arena. Ambassador Krill, still wearing his combat gear, stood to address the council. 3 days ago, I demanded these trials to prove humanity's worth, he said, his translator carrying his voice across the chamber. Today, they proved far more than that. They showed us that we have become stagnant in our power, following the same patterns for thousands of years. The ambassador turned to face Laura. Humans don't just adapt to face challenges. They help others adapt as well. In less than one day, they taught our warriors new ways of fighting. In less than one night, they helped us break patterns that had limited us for generations. Laura stood as well. "We didn't come here to replace your ways with ours," she said. "We came to add our strength to yours, to learn from each other and become stronger together." The council voted immediately and unanimously. Earth would be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. But there was more. The Council also voted to create a new joint defense force, combining the strengths of multiple species. Susan Carter was asked to help build and lead it. The Syndicate attacked today because they feared what humanity might bring to the galaxy, one council member noted. They were right to be afraid, but for the wrong reasons. They feared chaos, but humans don't bring chaos. They'd bring adaptation, evolution, growth. As the formal ceremony concluded, Steve Baker found himself standing next to Zix 427, the alien researcher who had first discovered humanity's potential. "Did you know it would turn out like this?" Steve asked. The alien's translator conveyed a sound like laughter. "No one can predict what humans will do," Zix 427 replied. "That's what makes you so remarkable." In the following days, as news of the battle spread across the galaxy, a new advisory was added to the Galactic Council's official records. Warning: approach Terra's warriors with caution, not because they are dangerous, though they are, but because they will change you. They will show you new ways to think, new ways to fight, new ways to grow. And once changed, you will never be the same. Laura found this addition amusing when she read it. "They still don't quite understand, do they?" she said to Ambassador Krill, who had become a close ally. "What do you mean?" the Drachnid asked. "That warning," she smiled. "It's not about approaching Earth's warriors with caution. It's about approaching Earth's warriors at all. Because once you do, you become part of our story. And human stories never end quite the way anyone expects." The ambassador's scales rippled, and what Laura had learned was amusement. "Perhaps that's why we needed you in the galaxy, to remind us that the best stories are the ones that surprise us." As Earth prepared to take its place among the stars, its people looked up at the night sky with new understanding. They weren't just joining the galactic community. They were helping to reshape it, one unexpected solution at a time. And somewhere out in the darkness between the stars, the Syndicate nursed its wounds and wondered how they had gotten it so wrong. They had tried to stop humanity from changing the galaxy, but in doing so, they had only proven why that change was necessary. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be.